So today we're going to talk about a micro budget movie called The Deeper You Dig from 2019. It was written and directed by John Adams and Toby Poser, who are in a relationship, which is interesting because not only do they write and directed it, but they starred in it. Their daughter, Zelda Adams, is actually one of the main characters in the movie. So it's a
Yes.
real family affair. Really thought, hey, this is a great example of what can be done with not just limited sets and a micro budget, but friends and family acting in a movie and
Yeah.
producing something interesting. What did you think about this movie, Scott?
So I like this film, and there was a big reason why I like this film. It was filled with ambiguity. So what I was left with was, were we watching the possession of somebody, or were we watching somebody so riddled with guilt for what they had done that they start to regress, right? And they, to make up for the sins of what they've done, they actually try to take on the role of what they destroy. I left this film saying, obviously it was low budget. There's not, so to be fair, there's not, I don't want to say that there's not a lot to it, because that is not true. There's a ton to this movie, but it's dialogue. It's all, almost all of it takes place in an old house that he is reconstructing. And it's actually these moments between him and the character that he I don't want to say murders, because he doesn't murder, but he does kill. And it's this dialogue between him and this apparition that is coming to him. That what's fascinating to me through all of this, Simple, is, was there ever an apparition, or was it all within his mind, and it was his slow degradation into madness for what he had done? What's your thoughts?
It's an interesting question. I actually felt that this was more of a possession. I thought there was some dialogue coming from her mom that seemed to indicate to me, especially when the mom starts to see the apparition as well. And I also looked at it as a possession because I kind of thought that the main character, John Adams's character, actually dies at the end, but he clearly doesn't because the character comes back.
So for me, what kind of made me question it was the name of the film was The Deeper You Dig, right? So the deeper you dig into guilt, the deeper you dig into
good point.
Confronting this demon. But Cynthia, you bring up some good points, because I do remember there are verbal cues to this movie that, kind of give you the idea that we are talking about a possession here. What is interesting to me in this, and this is one of the things we talk about all the time, is dialogue and the importance of how characters interact with each other. I think this film worked as well as it did was because they all knew each other. Husband, wife, daughter. There was a relationship there already, so that bond of mother to daughter exists. I think that's difficult to fake, so it was already there. And the guilt somebody feels for taking the life of a younger child, I totally see where John Adams' role as Kurt, because that was his daughter playing into that.
The guilt.
Yes. I thought they did just a great job with this film for what they had.
I agree. Some of the elements that didn't work for me, the basic premise, I didn't understand why she would be sledding in the middle of the night with no lights and near a road. So that part was a little bit.
I didn't get that either, Senthil. So I'm going to tell you right now, that was a scene that I'm like going, how did she even? Was there a hill here? Because it doesn't look like she's coming down the slope and hill. It looks like she's just sledding on a flat road. It didn't make sense.
And you don't even know that she was sledding until the mom makes the comment that she was out sledding. So I didn't know how she showed up on the road and how she got hit. I saw several supernatural elements that led me to also believe this was a possession. The comments about the 7 circles, we saw the crazy white light and the dead crow, and him vomiting up blood and maggots.
Yes.
And when she's doing a tarot card reading, there's some indicators she goes to see someone she mentored in the past, and he talks about the seven circles and what the seven circles mean. That he makes some alludes to the ability for a troubled spirit to come back. So those elements. However, the performances. I mean, we're talking about a micro budget here and a family making a movie, which is a great attempt, but the performances didn't quite sell it for me. And the story, the supernatural elements of it, and the guilt aspect of it, I thought were definitely not as tight and muddled a little bit. So I think they could have gone either direction. Now, I would have loved it if this had gone the direction that you were talking about, which is a psychological regression.
Yeah,
Would have been more interesting. But the seven circles led me to believe that this was
that's a good point. That was a good point. I will say what turned me off from this film just a little bit was the whole idea of the card reading, right? And the whole they were playing into that a little bit hard. I didn't think they needed to do that, right? And I think that John Adams as Kurt, he too was trying to play the guilt too much, right? And I actually think if they did just a little bit of a slower burn with him slowly going mad, right? Thinking he's seen this girl, this idea of regression. But now that you say it, I think you're right. I think you're right. It was a possession at the end.
What's your assessment of this? Is this something you'd recommend? And number one, and number two, what about these? What elements in this movie do you think we could leverage and learn from in making our own movie?
So I'm going to start with leveraging first, because again, this is another one of those movies where I'm watching very closely because it's filmed pretty much in very tight locations, right? There are some outdoor scenes, there's some of that, but it's not like it's expansive. It's very tight. It's like, don't fuck in the woods, right? It's tight. You're seeing scenes, somebody runs to the woods, but it's not like you've got this overly journey, right? So for me, again, as you and I are looking to build this script, what can you do with a limited set? That was exciting to me. This film, to me, although I enjoyed it, would I recommend it? I would say that if you had a free hour and a half, you should watch it. I mean, there was some good aspects of this film. Is it up at the top? Is it at the top of one of my, of our low budget lists that I would tell somebody to go check this film out? Probably not. It's going to go up above the top 10 that we've seen quite a few microfilms that we've talked about. But then again, what I would say, Senthil, for what they did for, the budget that they had and the characters they had, it was not a horrible attempt. I enjoyed the film. It's not like I regret it sitting there and watching the film. How about you? What's your thoughts?
There are elements about this that I liked. There are some compelling character relationships in there, but didn't really work for me ultimately. And so I'm a little bit on the fence in terms of recommendation. I thought the length went a little bit long. I thought the performances weren't quite as good as some of the micro budget, small budget movies we've seen. I thought the story meandered a little bit. They went two different directions. There's the guilt aspect of it, and then there's a supernatural aspect of it that was developed later on. So the story didn't quite hold together for me. It doesn't make the top 10 for me in terms of micro budget movies we've seen. We've seen more compelling movies, but I admire them for doing it, and they must have had a lot of fun as a family making this movie, and not just making it, but it's been relatively well reviewed by critics.
Yes,
and of course, it's on Amazon available for rent. So I would call all those wins.
I would say all of those are wins. And between you and me, Senthil, I would love to talk with these three just to find out what their experience was working together as a family to make a film. It would be a lot of fun to speak with all three of them.
I mean, what an interesting family Sunday, right? Let's go make a horror movie.
I agree. I mean, to me, that's why I'd love to talk with them. Where did they come up with the idea? And then was it difficult to work together? The three of them working together to do this film. I would definitely love to talk with all three.